You know that moment when your whole body stiffens, and your heart starts pounding before your brain even catches up. Yeah. That moment hit me like a truck the second she walked through the glass doors. Her name, Lena Hart, was neatly typed on the resume my assistant handed me 20 minutes before. It didn't ring any bells at the time. Names rarely do when you're reviewing 50 applications. But when she walked in, when I saw her eyes, green, wide, and still holding that nervous curiosity she always had, I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I hadn't seen Lena in almost 17 years. And there she was, applying to be my assistant. I stood up too fast and knocked over my pen. Lena. She froze. Her eyes flicked to my nameplate, then back up to my face. Noah. A small, sad smile formed on her lips. Noah Caldwell. Lena Hart, I said, more to myself than her. The office fell quiet for a second too long. I wasn't ready for this. I built this company from the ground up. 5 years ago, I was a nobody with a few lucky investments and a pile of ambition. Now I sat at the top of a Manhattan skyscraper with a corner office and 10,000 moving parts beneath me. I dealt with multi-million-dollar deals. Lawsuits. Mergers. Sharks in suits. But this, seeing her. This shook me. Please, I said, motioning to the chair across from me. She sat slowly, smoothing the front of her modest navy dress. She looked thinner than I remembered, her cheeks hollowed just slightly, like life had been pulling at her edges. Her hair was still that same copper brown. Pulled into a low bun, a little messy. Like she'd run out of time. I didn't know it was your company, she said, voice soft, barely above a whisper. I didn't know it was you applying. Silence again. Then I laughed, a dry, stunned, nervous laugh. Of all the people to walk in here today. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. I flipped through the papers on my desk like I hadn't memorized her file already. So, you've been freelancing. Copywriting. Admin work. Some marketing. Small jobs, she said. Mostly remote. Since the divorce. I raised an eyebrow. 2 years ago, she added. It wasn't mutual. I wasn't sure what to say to that, so I just nodded. I felt something stir in my chest that I didn't want to name. She looked around the room, probably noticing all the small luxuries, polished walnut desk, framed awards, the floor-to-ceiling windows spilling sunlight onto imported leather chairs. You've done well. I got lucky, I said automatically. But luck didn't build this empire. Obsession did. Pain did. Losing her all those years ago had lit a fire I didn't know how to put out. Until now, I hadn't realized it was still burning. You're overqualified for an assistant role, I said finally. I need the job, she replied. There it was. Blunt. Honest. Almost defiant. Why now? I asked. Why here? She hesitated. It was either this or move back in with my mother. And that would have killed me faster than poverty. I smiled before I could stop myself. That dry wit, she still had it. Let's talk over dinner, I said suddenly. Her eyebrows lifted. Not as part of the interview, I added quickly. This is personal. I want to know what happened. Where you went. Why you left. She looked down at her hands. Then back up at me. You sure? I nodded. Tonight. I booked the quietest booth at Harper's, the same place I took board members and foreign investors when I needed control over a conversation. When Lena arrived, dressed in a black coat with a few strands of wind-blown hair stuck to her lips, I felt something raw tear through me. Regret. And something else. We sat across from each other, the candle between us flickering like it knew secrets we hadn't said aloud yet. You remember how it ended, don't you? She asked after our appetizers. Of course I remember, I said, leaning back. You stopped calling. You moved to Boston without telling me. You broke your promise, Noah, she said. You told me we'd figure it out together. Then one day you were just gone. No letters. No calls. Nothing. I looked down at the linen napkin in my lap. I wanted to argue. defend myself. But all I could do was nod. I was young, I said quietly. Scared. Broke. So was I. Her voice cracked a little. But I waited. I checked my phone for months. I didn't even start dating again until 3 years later. I clenched my jaw. My fingers curled against the tablecloth. Then you got married. I did, she said. To a man who never loved me. He wanted a secretary, not a wife. I looked up sharply. He cheated, she continued. Right after our daughter was born. A sudden stillness fell between us. You have a daughter. Her name's Grace. She's 4. I blinked. That information hit harder than I expected. And he left. I asked. Worse. He stayed, until the money dried up. Then he took off with a paralegal and filed for custody just to spite me. Jesus. I lost everything, she whispered. The house. My savings. I'm drowning, Noah. Her voice cracked again, and this time she didn't hide it. Her eyes glistened. Something inside me shifted. This wasn't just an awkward reunion. This was fate putting her back in my life when she needed help. When I could help. Come work for me, I said. Full-time. Executive assistant. Double the salary listed. She stared at me, stunned. I'm not doing it out of pity, I said. You're smart, capable. You were always the strongest person I knew. She covered her mouth, like she didn't trust her own breath. I'll have my assistant draw up the paperwork tomorrow, I said. But tonight, let's just talk. Her hand trembled as she reached for her glass. And for a second, I saw the girl I fell in love with at 22, hopeful, fierce, full of dreams, and I realized she'd been carrying heartbreak alone for far too long. I told myself I was just helping her. That this was business. But deep down, something dangerous had started to stir. Old feelings don't stay buried forever. Especially not when they walk back into your life in heels and heartbreak. They say the past is like an echo, it fades, but never really disappears. By the end of Lena's first week at the office, I realized how true that was. She slipped into the role like she'd always belonged. Within hours, she reorganized my calendar, cleaned up a year's worth of cluttered project folders, and even anticipated a vendor conflict I hadn't noticed. My staff, especially the older execs, were impressed. I could hear it in their tone when they spoke to her. But not everyone welcomed her return. Especially not Carla. Carla was my head of PR, sharp. Ambitious. Beautiful in a designer dress kind of way. We had history, short-lived, complicated, and something we both agreed to leave behind for the sake of work. But when she saw Lena for the first time, something changed in her face. She didn't hide it either. So that's her, she asked me flatly after the Monday morning briefing. I didn't answer. She's the assistant now, she continued, raising an eyebrow. I hope you're making decisions with your head, Noah. Not your memory. That tone of hers, it scratched at me. A warning. A dare. I'm making decisions based on qualifications, I replied. Carla gave a slow, knowing smile. Sure. But remember, nostalgia has a way of clouding reality. She walked off before I could respond. Lena noticed the tension. Of course she did. She was too perceptive not to. By Wednesday, she had stopped eating lunch in the break room and started taking her meals at her desk. Always busy. Always polite. But a wall had gone up. I hated that. So, that evening, I stepped into her office and closed the door. She glanced up from her screen. Everything okay? I could ask you the same. She gave me a tired smile. I'm fine, Noah. No, you're not. She looked at me, then sighed. It's nothing. Just. I know I don't exactly belong in your world. I sat across from her. You do. You more than do. She hesitated. Some of the women here, your inner circle, they don't like me. I exhaled. Carla. She gave a small nod. She made it clear I'm stepping on sacred ground. I rubbed my temple. I had built a company where talent mattered more than status, but I hadn't considered what old emotions would stir by bringing Lena back into my orbit. "Let me deal with her," I said. "No," Lena replied. "Please don't. I don't want special treatment." "You're not getting special treatment," I said. "You're getting respect." She looked down. "I've spent too long being invisible. It's easier than being targeted." That hit me harder than I expected. "Not here," I said. "Not anymore." She gave a faint smile but didn't look convinced. The next few days blurred together, board meetings, client calls, endless strategy sessions, but through it all, Lena was there. Efficient. Calm. And yet, I could sense something shifting between us. It was in the way she lingered in the doorway a few seconds longer before leaving my office. The way her eyes searched mine when we passed in the hall. The warmth in her voice when she said my name. I told myself it was just professional chemistry. But by Friday night, that illusion shattered. I found myself at my penthouse window, looking down at the glowing cityscape below, one glass of scotch untouched beside me, and Lena's voice echoing in my memory. She had said something earlier that stayed with me all day. "You know what the hardest part of losing everything is? It's not the money. It's realizing no one ever really saw you. Not even the people who claimed to love you." I couldn't sleep. So I texted her. "Noah, you up?" A few minutes later, the 3 little dots popped up. "Lena, yeah." Couldn't sleep either. I stared at the screen for a moment, then typed. "Noah, come up. I'll buzz you in." A pause. Then. "Lena, give me 10 minutes." She arrived wearing jeans, a sweatshirt, and sneakers, casual, real, and somehow more beautiful than I'd ever remembered. We sat on the balcony. The city pulsed below us like a living thing. "I used to dream about this," she said quietly. "Sitting here with you. Seeing what your life became." I glanced at her. "And it's breathtaking. But it feels lonely." I said nothing. "I mean," she continued, "you've built a fortress, Noah. A beautiful, gleaming fortress. But what's the point if you're the only one in it?" Her words cut deep. Because she was right. I had money. Power. Status. But my days were empty and my nights were silent. No family. No true friends. Just meetings and milestones. And for the first time in years, I wanted more. "I don't want to be alone anymore," I said, surprising myself. Lena looked at me, startled. "I mean it," I said. "I've spent years chasing success because I thought it would numb everything I lost. But it didn't. And now you're here, and I feel like maybe the universe is giving me a second chance." She inhaled sharply. "Don't say that, Noah." "Why not?" "Because second chances only work when both people are whole. And I'm not." I looked into her eyes. "But we were never whole back then either," I said. "We were just kids pretending we knew what forever meant. Maybe now, with the scars and the weight and the experience, we'd get it right." She blinked fast, like she was trying not to cry. "Let me take you out," I said. "Not like a boss. Not like a friend. Like someone who hasn't stopped caring." She stood up slowly. "I should go. Lena." She turned to me, her voice trembling. "You have no idea how much I want to say yes. But I can't. Not yet." And just like that, she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, and I stood there, frozen. That night, I didn't sleep at all. Because for the first time in years, I felt something real crack open inside me. And it terrified me. It's strange how quickly hope can turn into doubt. One minute, I was standing on the edge of something new with Lena, a second chance, a fragile beginning. The next, I was staring at her through glass walls, wondering if I ever really knew her at all. The shift wasn't sudden. It crept in quietly, like a fog. It started the following week. Lena was back in full assistant mode, organized, attentive, a force of calm in my chaotic life. She handled vendor disputes, coordinated travel, even saved $1 million deal from collapsing by catching a clause our legal team missed. Everyone praised her. including me. But the more perfect she became, the more something inside me twisted. Because something didn't add up. One morning, I came into the office early. Earlier than usual. The halls were still dark, the city still waking up. I liked those moments, when the world felt quiet enough for me to think. As I rounded the corner near my office, I saw the light on in Lena's room. That wasn't unusual, she'd been coming in early for weeks now. But what I heard stopped me in my tracks. Her voice. Whispering. I stepped closer. The door was cracked open. "No, I'm not saying anything yet," she said, tense. "Just trust me. He's not who you think." Pause. Silence. Then, "I know what I'm doing." I froze. The voice was sharp, not the soft tone she used around me. There was an edge to it, calculated, certain. I stepped back, suddenly unsure if I should confront her. My chest felt tight, my throat dry. The second I heard her say goodbye, I slipped away before she could see me. All morning, I tried to shake it off. Maybe she was talking about someone else. Maybe she was venting. Maybe I misheard. But the truth is, I didn't mishear anything. And I couldn't stop thinking about what she said. He's not who you think. Who was she talking to? Who was she talking about? That same afternoon, Carla walked into my office without knocking. Again. "Got a minute?" she asked. I nodded. She closed the door behind her and leaned against the frame with her arms crossed. "You ever wonder why she really came back?" I looked up. "Carla. She shows up out of nowhere. Says she's desperate. But within days, she's your right hand. Suddenly she's working weekends. Late nights. And now you're buzzing her into your penthouse." I stood up. "That's none of your business." "Oh, it is," she said coolly. "Because if you make decisions that affect the company based on your old flame's sob story, then we all suffer. She earned this job." Carla tilted her head. "You sure about that?" I hesitated. "I had our security guy pull footage from the garage last Thursday night," she added, casually tossing a flash drive onto my desk. "I thought you might want to see who she was meeting." I didn't touch it. Carla smiled. "Suit yourself. But I think you're smarter than this, Noah." She turned and left. For hours, I didn't move the drive. I stared at it like it might explode. By midnight, I gave in. The footage was grainy. Black and white. But clear enough. It showed Lena leaving the building around 9:17 p.m. She got into a car that wasn't hers, a black sedan. The license plate was blocked, but the man who opened the door for her. I leaned forward. I knew that face. Mark Ellison. My ex-lawyer. We hadn't spoken in almost 2 years, since I fired him for leaking confidential financial details to a competitor. Why the hell was Lena meeting with him? My blood ran cold. I shut the video, leaned back in my chair, and stared at the ceiling. What was she doing? What did she want from me? And why didn't she tell me? The next day, I tried to act normal. I walked into the office with a tight smile, pretending the world hadn't tilted. But every glance, every word from Lena felt suspicious now. My trust, what little I'd rebuilt, was already cracking. At noon, she knocked on my office door. "Lunch meeting in 20 minutes. Do you want me to prep a summary?" "Yeah." "Sure," I said, barely looking up. She paused. "Everything okay?" I forced a smile. "Just tired." She didn't believe me. That night, I didn't go home. I stayed late, pretending to catch up on reports. But really, I was watching her. Observing. Looking for something, anything, to explain what I saw. At 8:03 p.m., she grabbed her coat and walked out. I followed. Quietly. Careful not to be seen. She didn't get in a car this time. She walked 3 blocks east, turned down a quiet street, and entered a rundown apartment building I'd never seen before. I waited. 30 minutes later, she emerged with a small duffel bag, and a child. A little girl. Blonde curls. No older than 5. Lena held her close as they walked. Her daughter. Grace. I stayed hidden, my heart thudding in my chest. But then something else happened. Across the street, parked just out of sight, another man stepped out of a car. Mark. He leaned against the hood, arms crossed, watching them. Not smiling. Not waving. Just watching. Lena didn't see him. But I did. He waited until she disappeared around the corner, then got back into his car and drove off. And that's when I knew something was deeply wrong. Back in my penthouse that night, I stared at the city again. Same window. Same view. But everything looked different. I picked up my phone. My fingers hovered over her contact. I needed answers. I needed the truth. But instead of calling, I poured myself a drink, sat down, and whispered aloud to no one. What are you hiding, Lena? My thoughts spiraled. Was she working with Mark? Was this some kind of scheme, revenge, blackmail, leverage? Had I let my emotions blind me to something obvious? I remembered how she looked the night she first told me about her divorce. The way her hands shook when she said she lost everything. Was it real? Was any of it? I wanted to believe it was. I needed to. But that image, her getting into a car with a man who betrayed me, kept looping in my mind. Like a wound I couldn't ignore. And just as I began to drown in doubt, my phone buzzed. Lena, can we talk tomorrow? There's something I need to tell you. I stared at the screen. Tomorrow. Why tomorrow? Why not now? And deep down, I knew. Whatever she was hiding. It was big. There's a moment, just before you learn the truth, where your entire body seems to brace for impact. Like your heart knows what's coming before your mind will let it in. That's how I felt the next morning as I sat in my office, staring at the door, waiting for Lena to arrive. I hadn't slept. Not even for a minute. Every sound, every tick of the wall clock stretched time like a wire about to snap. And when she finally stepped in, soft knock, hesitant smile, eyes searching mine, I felt something inside me splinter. She closed the door quietly behind her, then stood in the same spot she had the first day we met again. But today, something in her posture was different. She didn't look like the calm, collected professional I'd grown used to. She looked like someone who had been carrying a weight far too long. And was about to let it drop. I know you've been watching me, she said, without any preamble. And you're right. There's something I haven't told you. I didn't respond. I couldn't. I just stared at her, waiting for the blow to land. Lena took a deep breath. His name is Grace. She's 5. And yes, she's my daughter. But what I didn't say is, I'm not raising her alone. I felt the first sting then. A cold ripple that started in my spine. Her voice trembled, but she kept going. Mark Ellison, he's her father. My stomach dropped. It was like gravity gave out beneath me. I stood up slowly, not sure whether I was angry or just stunned. Mark. The lawyer I fired for leaking company secrets. That Mark. She flinched, nodded once. How long? I asked, my voice low. How long were you with him? Almost 6 years, she said softly. We met after you and I drifted. I didn't know who he really was at first. He was charming, persistent. Said all the right things. But he changed, Noah. He wasn't who I thought. I stepped around the desk, arms crossed, needing distance between us. So you left him. And now what? You're working for me while secretly meeting with him in parking lots. What am I supposed to believe? She looked at me, and there was pain in her eyes, raw and unfiltered. He's threatening me. Those words pulled me up short. What? He's not just Grace's father, Noah. He's dangerous. Controlling. Manipulative. I left him after years of emotional abuse, but I never had the money or power to truly escape. When I lost my job last year, I had nowhere to go. And then I saw your assistant posting. It felt like fate. I thought maybe, if I could get back on my feet, I could finally break free. I blinked slowly, trying to absorb the pieces. He found out where I worked, she continued. Started showing up again. At first just calls. Then he waited outside Grace's school. Then the apartment. I didn't want to bring this to your doorstep, Noah. I was trying to protect you from him. I paced to the window. My pulse was pounding in my ears. So all of this, working here, the long hours, staying late, was about hiding. No, she said quickly, walking toward me. I needed the job, yes. But the way I feel around you, that's not fake. That was never fake. I turned to her. Then why didn't you just tell me? Because I didn't want you to see me as broken. I didn't want you to think I was using you. I wanted to earn my place here, not as someone you used to love, not as someone needing your rescue, but as someone who deserved to stand beside you. Her words hung in the air between us, thick and heavy with guilt and grief. I looked at her, really looked at her. She was shaking slightly. She hadn't slept either. Her eyes were red, her voice hoarse. And suddenly, the anger I'd been holding onto began to change shape. It wasn't rage. It was heartbreak. I stepped forward. Lena. I could have helped. She nodded, a tear slipping down her cheek. I know. But I didn't want to drag you into his mess. I exhaled, long and deep. It's already too late for that. She looked up, startled. I walked to my desk, pulled open a drawer, and slid the flash drive Carla gave me across the glass surface. I saw the footage. Lena's face went pale. You getting into that car with him? You didn't tell me, Lena. You just kept smiling. Kept working like nothing was wrong. I was scared, she whispered. He said if I told anyone, he'd take Grace from me. He has money. Lawyers. I have nothing but a half-furnished apartment and a kid I'd die to protect. Silence fell again. And this time, it felt like the deepest part of the storm. I leaned against the desk. Why did you even come back, Lena? After all these years? After him? Why here? Why me? She looked up, and the words came so softly, I almost missed them. Because you were the only person I ever felt safe with. Something inside me cracked. I walked toward her, every step weighed down by years of what-ifs. I don't know how to trust you, I said, honestly. I want to. But it's hard. I've been burned by too many people who smiled like you're smiling now. I'll earn it, she said, placing a hand over her heart. I'll do whatever it takes. We stood there, two people holding years of wounds in their chests, trying to figure out how to breathe in the same room. Finally, I nodded. We go to the police. We file a report. You don't face him alone. Her expression cracked with relief and fear. I'll cover the legal team. I'll hire security. But I need you to be honest from now on. No more secrets. Not between us. I promise, she said, her voice breaking. No more lies. As she turned to leave the office, I saw the weight lift slightly from her shoulders. But even as the door clicked shut behind her, I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of something far more dangerous. Because Mark Ellison wasn't the kind of man who let go easily. And now he knew exactly where to aim. It didn't take long for the cracks to show. The moment Lena and I decided to bring everything into the open, file the report, involve my legal team, hire security, I thought things might settle, or at least shift towards some sense of control. But control was the first thing I lost. It started with a headline. Tech mogul caught harboring ex-convict assistant with shady past. The article hit the press 3 days after we went to the police. Someone had leaked Lena's old restraining order against Mark, and twisted it into a narrative that made her look like the problem. They dredged up everything, her bankruptcy, her brief stay at a women's shelter, even old photos of her leaving court, clutching Grace to her chest like a shield. The article was riddled with insinuations that she had manipulated me into giving her a job and was now, entwined romantically, with me for personal gain. By noon, my inbox was overflowing. Board members. PR teams. Clients. Even Carla stormed into my office, face like stone, tossing the printed headline on my desk. I told you, she snapped. I warned you about her. I didn't answer. I couldn't. I was too busy trying to steady my breathing. Because as much as I wanted to believe Lena and I were stronger than this, stronger than public scandal, I could feel the ground shifting under us. She's toxic for your brand, Noah, Carla continued. Your shares are already dropping. Investors are spooked. You're risking everything for someone you barely know anymore. I stood up, calm but cold. She's not toxic. She's the victim of a smear campaign. And if anyone should know what it feels like to be wrongly accused, it's me. Carla narrowed her eyes. I'm not here to argue ethics. I'm here to protect this company. I walked around the desk, opened the door. Then you can start by leaving my office. She didn't move at first. But when she finally did, she left one final sentence behind her like a dagger. You can't save her, Noah. And she's going to bring you down with her. That night, I didn't go home. I drove to Lena's apartment, heart-heavy, unsure of what I'd say when I saw her. She opened the door before I could knock. Her eyes were swollen from crying, her hands trembling. I saw it, she whispered. I nodded. We'll fight it. She shook her head. He knows everything. He's pulling strings I didn't even know existed. He wants to ruin me. He wants to ruin us, I corrected gently. Grace peeked out from the hallway, and Lena turned, forcing a smile. Sweetie, go back to your room. I'll be there in a minute. The little girl nodded and disappeared behind the door. I stepped inside, shut the door behind me, and pulled Lena into an embrace. She melted into my arms like she'd been holding herself upright for days. I don't know how much more I can take, she whispered. You don't have to do this alone anymore. But as I said it, I realized something, we weren't alone either. Because someone was watching. I could feel it. In the way the blinds moved just slightly. In the sudden flicker of headlights across the living room wall. Mark was nearby. And he wasn't done. The next morning, my office was like a war zone. PR teams scrambling to draft statements. Security doubling staff at every entrance. Legal drafting cease and desist letters for tabloids that had already published half-truths and flat-out lies. But the real blow came at 3:47 p.m. An anonymous email landed in the inbox of every senior partner, investor, and media contact connected to my company. It included a single file. A voice recording. Lena's voice. Just trust me. He's not who you think. I know what I'm doing. My blood froze. It was the exact snippet I had overheard through her office door weeks ago. Only now, cut out of context, it sounded calculating. Sinister. The damage was immediate. Clients began pulling out of projects. A speaking engagement I had been preparing for months was cancelled overnight. And the board? Silent. Too silent. By 6 p.m., I was called into an emergency meeting. The room was stiff, cold. Gray suits, stone faces. They asked about Lena. About the rumors. The headlines. The recording. They didn't say it outright, but the message was clear: step down or be dragged down. I walked out of that meeting feeling like a man halfway through a free fall. Back at Lena's apartment, she was already packing. You're leaving? I asked, stunned. She nodded without looking up. Grace isn't safe here anymore. There was a man outside the school today. He didn't approach her, but she said he looked like the man in the photo you showed me. Mark. My fists clenched at my sides. I need to disappear for a while, she said. Just until this blows over. Lena, no. I'm not running. I'm protecting my daughter. Her voice cracked then. And I'm protecting you. I don't need protection. I need you. She finally looked at me. If I stay, everything you built will crumble. I won't let that happen. You were always destined for more, Noah. Don't let me be the reason you lose it. I crossed the room and took her hand, firm and steady. You're not a burden. You're the only thing that's kept me from losing my mind these past few weeks. She stepped closer. Then let me go before I drag you into the fire. I shook my head. Too late. But the truth was, a part of me agreed with her. Not because I didn't want her, but because I was starting to realize just how far Mark would go. And the deeper I got into this, the more it became clear, he wasn't after her. He was after me. And Lena. She was just the perfect weapon. That night, after she left with Grace, suitcase in one hand, little girl in the other, I stood alone in her empty apartment. It smelled like her. Vanilla. Old books. Coffee. I sat on the floor, surrounded by the quiet, and tried to imagine what came next. I had lost control of the narrative. Of my company. Of my name. And now I'd lost her too. I picked up my phone, dialed one number. Not Lena. Not Carla. Mark. It rang twice. Then his voice, smooth and smug. Well, well. Finally ready to talk. I'm done playing games, I said coldly. Meet me. Tomorrow. Face to face. You sure that's wise, he replied. You want my attention? You've got it. There was a pause, then, downtown garage. Level 3. Noon. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, phone still in my hand, staring at nothing. Tomorrow, I'd face the man who was trying to destroy everything I cared about. And maybe, just maybe, I'd finally learn why. There are moments in life when everything you thought you knew, about love, about trust, about who you are, suddenly feels like it's being held up to a flame. And all that's left after the burning is the truth. The next day, I arrived at the garage 15 minutes early. Level 3 was mostly empty, except for a few oil-stained spaces and the flickering overhead lights that buzzed with that sickly fluorescent hum. The air was heavy with dust and gasoline, and the echo of my footsteps sounded louder than they should have. I didn't bring security. Didn't bring legal backup. I wanted this to be personal. Direct. Honest. I stood beside my car, arms crossed, heart pounding like a war drum in my chest, and waited. When Mark finally pulled in, sleek black car, dark windows, I didn't flinch. He stepped out casually, dressed like the kind of man who thought the world owed him power, tailored suit, sunglasses, smug smile stretched across a face I once trusted with my business, my ideas, and now had come to hate. He looked at me like a predator sizing up a wounded animal. Noah, he said, as if we were old friends meeting for lunch. I was beginning to think you'd back out. I didn't respond right away. I wanted to study him, really see him. The charm was still there, that glossy, artificial charisma. But beneath it, I saw something darker. A bitterness he wore like a second skin. You've been busy, I said finally, voice low. Leaking files, twisting facts, putting Lena and her daughter in danger. Tell me, Mark, when did you decide revenge was more important than your own daughter's safety? His smile faltered for a second. Just a flicker. But it was enough. That little girl isn't the issue here, he said, waving it off like she was just collateral damage in some corporate game. The issue is you, Noah. Always acting like the savior, like the golden boy who can fix everyone's problems. You think people don't see through that? I never claimed to be perfect, I said, stepping closer. But I don't destroy people's lives just because they left me. He tilted his head, curious. Is that what she told you? That she left me? No, Noah. That's the version that plays well in her story, sure. But the truth? She ran. Took my daughter, took my money, and disappeared like I was some monster. You are a monster, I said sharply. I've seen the way she looks when your name comes up. I've seen the fear. The broken sleep. The way she flinches at loud voices. You didn't love her. You controlled her. Something in his face shifted then. The smile dropped. His hands clenched. You think you know everything, he snapped. You don't know what she's capable of. You don't know what we went through. She made me this way. No one makes you hurt people, I replied, keeping my voice steady. That's a choice. And you've made yours over and over again. He took a step forward, his jaw tight. She ruined my life. I took one too. And now you're trying to ruin hers. And mine. Silence hung between us. Then he reached into his jacket, slowly. My fists tensed. But he didn't pull a weapon. He pulled out a small envelope and tossed it to the ground between us. I picked it up and opened it, hands steady despite the adrenaline now flooding my veins. Inside were photos. Lena. In my office. In my apartment. With Grace. All taken from a distance. Some even looked like they'd been snapped through windows. My skin crawled. She's being watched, I said, rage rising. He shrugged. Call it insurance. Just a reminder that I'm always 10 steps ahead. You crossed a line. I haven't even started. The heat behind my eyes threatened to break me. But I held it together, because someone had to. I tossed the envelope back at him. You're not going to win, Mark. You already lost, he said coldly. Your name's in the gutter. Your company's hemorrhaging trust. And Lena. She'll run again. She always does. Because deep down, she knows she ruins everything she touches. I stepped in, just inches from his face. She's stronger than you think. And she's not alone anymore. He smiled again, but this time it was hollow. We'll see. He turned and walked back to his car, engine growling to life seconds later. As he pulled away, I stood still for a long time, the photos still burning behind my eyes. That night, I couldn't sleep. Not just because of what he said. But because, for the first time, I realized he might be right about one thing. I had lost control. Of my name. Of my company. Of the narrative. But not of myself. And not of what I felt for Lena. The next morning, I made a decision. It wasn't easy. It wasn't safe. But it was necessary. I called a press conference. My PR team tried to stop me. The lawyers begged me to reconsider. But I walked onto that stage, took the microphone, and looked out at a sea of reporters like a man ready to set himself on fire if it meant keeping someone else warm. I'm here to speak the truth, I began, voice clear. Because I'd been silent for too long. I told them everything. About Lena. About Mark. About the manipulation, the threats, the lies he spread through back channels and press leaks. I told them how this wasn't just about business or personal reputation, this was about a man who had abused his power and now used fear as a weapon against a woman and her child. And I ended with this. Let them write their headlines. Let them speculate. But know this, I will not step aside. I will not be bullied into silence. And I will not abandon the people I care about because it's more convenient for public opinion. The room went quiet. For a moment, I thought I'd lost them. But then came the first clap. Then another. And suddenly, the silence broke. Not into chaos. But into support. I found Lena that evening, in a safe house I'd arranged with my security team. She opened the door slowly, not sure what to expect. I held out my phone. The press conference was playing on screen. She watched in stunned silence. When it ended, she turned to me, tears slipping down her cheeks. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, I replied. Because the only thing worse than losing everything is losing you. She hugged me like she never wanted to let go again. And this time, I didn't either. But deep down, I knew it wasn't over. Mark wasn't done. He never walked away quietly. And the real storm was still coming. It all came to a head on a Monday morning. A quiet, gray, unremarkable Monday, exactly the kind of day where you least expect everything to fall apart. I was in my office, just after 9, when my assistant buzzed in. You need to see this, she said, voice shaky. I clicked the link she sent me. It was a video. A grainy, deliberately shaky recording of Lena, taken through a window, zoomed in like someone had been watching her for weeks. The audio was muffled, but you could make out enough. She was talking to someone off camera. Her words were twisted, cut, and edited into something they were never meant to be. In the video, it sounded like she was confessing to manipulating me. To using me. To planning everything from the beginning. Of course, I knew the real footage, because I was there when she'd said those words, months ago, in a completely different context. It was a conversation about Mark. About survival. About how people like him twist everything to make themselves the victim. But in the hands of someone like Mark, it became a weapon. This was his final move. He wanted to bury her. And if I stood beside her, he'd bury me too. The video spread like wildfire. Blogs. News stations. Anonymous social media accounts flooding the comments on every post I'd ever made. Even people I thought were on my side were suddenly quiet. Backing away. That afternoon, the board held a vote. Unanimous. I was removed as CEO. Just like that, the company I built, my vision, my sweat, my name, was no longer mine. I packed my things in silence. There were no tears. Just a cold, surreal kind of grief that pressed against my chest and refused to let go. I didn't call Lena right away. I didn't want her to feel the guilt I knew was inevitable. Instead, I drove. Nowhere in particular. I ended up at a small beach I used to go to when I was younger, before the company, before the money, before the world started watching everything I did. I sat on the sand in my suit and tie, shoes off, watching the waves roll in and out. And for the first time in years, I asked myself a question I hadn't dared to consider. What if this is it? What if Mark wins? What if Lena disappears again? What if I never get any of it back? But somewhere in the crash of water and the silence between gusts of wind, I heard something else. Not answers. Not clarity. Just breath. Just life. Still here. Still mine. I took out my phone and texted her. Come find me. You'll know where. She showed up an hour later. No makeup. Hair tied back. Grace holding her hand. When I stood to greet them, Grace ran toward me and wrapped her arms around my waist. I missed you, she whispered. I missed you too, I said, voice cracking more than I expected. Lena walked slowly, her eyes searching mine, unsure of what she'd find. You saw the video, she said softly. I nodded. And, she asked. And I lost everything, I replied. The board turned on me. The company's gone. Her face crumpled. I'm so sorry, Noah. No, I said, stepping closer. Don't apologize. You didn't do this. She looked away, ashamed. He's never going to stop. Then we make him stop. Her eyes lifted. How? By exposing him. For real this time. Not through whispers. Not in shadows. But loud. Public. On record. She hesitated. It won't be pretty. People will dig into everything. They'll ask questions about Grace, about the past. About the mistakes I made. Then we face it together, I said. No more secrets. No more shame. A pause. Then, okay. We met with a journalist Lena trusted, someone who had once worked on a story about domestic abuse and survivors fighting back against their abusers. This time, she agreed to speak on the record. No aliases. No hiding. She told her story in full detail, about the control, the manipulation, the quiet terror that followed her for years even after she escaped. About how she'd rebuilt her life piece by piece, only to be dragged back under by the very men who once claimed to love her. I added my voice too. About the smear campaigns. The blackmail. The final video that cost me everything. We provided proof. Emails. Threats. Bank transactions. Surveillance logs. It wasn't just a story of a man obsessed with revenge. It was the story of a man who weaponized reputation, fear, and influence to hurt the people he couldn't control anymore. It took a week for the piece to come out. It went viral overnight. Not in a sensational, scandal-chasing way, but in a movement kind of way. People shared their own stories. Women who had lived through similar abuse. Men who had spoken up and been silenced. The tide was changing. And Mark? He was arrested 2 days later. Illegally obtained surveillance footage. Harassment. Financial fraud. And multiple violations of protective orders. It wasn't the end of his story. But it was the end of his reach. He wouldn't be coming near Lena or Grace again. I didn't get my company back. The board replaced me with a safer, quieter executive. But something else happened instead. People started reaching out. Startups. Nonprofits. Even a couple of young founders who said my speech had changed how they viewed leadership, not as performance, but as responsibility. I started over. Slowly. Quietly. And this time, I didn't do it alone. Lena and I took things slow, not because we were unsure, but because we finally could. No more fear. No more pretending. Grace started calling me Dad one night at dinner, completely unprompted. Lena cried. So did I. A year later, we stood together in front of a small house with a crooked porch and the kind of backyard that begged for family dinners and homemade swings. It wasn't a mansion. It wasn't beachfront property. But it was ours. As the sun dipped below the horizon, Lena leaned into me and whispered, "Do you regret any of it?" I didn't answer right away. I thought about the losses. The betrayal. The crushing silence in those empty offices. And then I looked at her. At Grace. At the life we'd pieced together with trembling hands and stubborn hearts. No, I said finally. Because sometimes losing everything is how you find what matters most.